Listen up.
Welcome to the PowerShell Podcast, the podcast for PowerShell and the PowerShell community. And now, here's your host, Andrew Plaw.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the PowerShell Podcast. I'm your host again, another week talking about PowerShell. Andrew Plaw, that's me, at Andrew Plaw Tech. You can find me on socials. LinkedIn is the best one. Just look at my name. I love connecting with new people. And let's just get right into it. Welcome to the podcast, Jeff Hicks, legend of PowerShell, been around for a very long time, taught and brought up multiple generations of PowerShell folks you see out there today that I've had on the podcast that are doing all these things. If you look on the family tree, you're quite near the origins of it all. So welcome to the podcast. How you been?
Good. Thanks for having me. It's a long time.
It's been a while. Yeah, I didn't realize that. Time kind of just been flying by to the point that it was earlier this week. Well, in this time, and in current time, when this gets published, it'll be the first episode for PowerShell Summit. So shout out to everybody who's there. But going back in time, at the time of the recording, 3 weeks before Summit, I only just now realized that Summit was in 3 weeks. In my head, it was like 3 months away. I was enjoying Christmas not too long ago. I'm still like kind of jolly. And here we are, man. It's prep time.
Yeah, it's coming up really quickly. I'm actually doing a main session talk for the first time in I don't know how many years, because I've been so busy with on-ramp the last 5 years or so. And so I know what I want to talk about, and I kind of parse it in my head, but actually need to sit down and actually put something down on, digital paper and, okay, how am I going to present this? What do I want to do? And
what is your topic?
So I'm going to be talking about what I call the human side of PowerShell scripting. I've spent, as you said, from the very beginning, teaching PowerShell, which really means teaching the mechanics. How does PowerShell work, and what I need to write in order to achieve a certain result. But over the last few years, I've kind of started moving kind of above that, almost like a meta layer, and looking at what I refer to as PowerShell squishy bits. And what are the things that you as a script author or function author, tool maker, what are the things that you need to keep in mind in order to make your code as easy, as flexible, as non-problematic for a user to use? It's easy these days to go to ChatGPT or Copilot and say, hey, I need code that does X. So write me the mechanics. That's not that difficult. You still obviously need to verify that the mechanics are what you want, but then how is that going to be consumed? How is someone going to use that code? What kind of output are they expecting? What are they going to do with that output? There are a whole slew of questions that I think a lot of people don't take into account that could make their code better beyond just, it gets the job done. I'm all about getting the job done, but I want to get it done nicely and in the PowerShell way. And so my talk will be a lot of that.
Got me thinking, because that's kind of a topic that you'll see once you get into PowerShell and you start implementing it. You're going to want to have the biggest adoption of your tools if you're using it at your team or as a consultant or whatever the case may be. And yeah, that's kind of a little bit of tips can go a very long way, I think, because otherwise, if you don't get some external tips, I think you just have to learn by making mistakes the whole time.
Yeah, so the session is based on a book, which is I just published on LeanPub called Behind the PowerShell Pipeline, which itself is drawn from a newsletter I've been publishing for the last couple of years based on the idea of what is going on behind the pipeline. What else do I need to know about PowerShell in order to write really good PowerShell code or even to use PowerShell effectively in the console? So the talks are kind of a culmination of things I've been working on and writing about for the last couple of years.
Awesome. And I'll have a link to that in the show notes. And you actually just gave a talk at PowerShell Wednesday. I'm going to give a quick little shout out to PowerShell Wednesday. Every single Wednesday, we're meeting and we're talking PowerShell. We have awesome guests like Jeff Hicks, Joshua J, all kinds of people, Fred. And you're always welcome to join us, discord.gg/PDQ every single Wednesday. We're there for you. Jeff was there for us today. Jeff also comes bearing gifts. This episode goes up on the first day of PowerShell Summit. And for those of you who aren't there, that's okay. You're still part of the community. We still got your back. And in fact, Jeff has your back and a little giveaway. So he mentioned his new book, and he's going to be giving away a copy to one random person who shares their journey into PowerShell in the PowerShell scripting channel of the PDQ Discord, discord.gg/PDQ. I'll choose a random winner, send you the code. You can thank Jeff. And Jeff, that's an exciting new project, but you are kind of like, you're very quick to be able to take PowerShell from your head and kind of translate it into written word. So
that's because I've been thinking and doing PowerShell for like 20 years.
That's why when I hear you explain the problem space of your book, it really kind of gives me a chance to sit in your shoes a little bit, because you do have a unique, very advanced perspective on practical PowerShell in the world and teaching people it and actually implementing it. And there are not that many people who have that perspective that you have. There just aren't that many people with that much experience.
Yeah, I think what I've realized is I'm looking now at, I guess, what I'm considering emergent qualities of PowerShell. Stuff that probably Snover and the PowerShell team never even considered when they first started writing PowerShell. Because I have always been interested in teaching and helping people use PowerShell. So it's one thing, to write PowerShell code and to write PowerShell code that does PowerShell like the Microsoft team does. But then once you start using it and using it in the PowerShell ecosystem, then there are new qualities that I think emerge that people don't always think about. And that's kind of what I have kind of been looking at for the last couple of years, and probably what I'll coast out my career, talking about.
Let's look back 5 years. So you're kind of mentioning the PowerShell landscape and that kind of thing. What is better about PowerShell now compared to like 5 to 7 years ago?
Well, a couple of things. One, I think the community is even bigger, and there are more and more opportunities between social media platforms and Discord and events for people to get involved and for people to learn things between, our PowerShell Summit, PS Conf EU. Occasionally, there are some events, like I'm speaking in Scotland this summer at a Workplace Ninja event, and I'm going to be doing some PowerShell content. So there's always PowerShell content like MMS. So there are more opportunities, I think, now than there even were before. Probably the other thing, for better or for worse, is all the AI stuff. So that has just exploded, obviously, the last couple of years. And I find myself, yes, there's a lot of AI stuff that does help me. I still find some limitations myself, because maybe that's just because I'm really trying to write code that is really pushing the boundary, and ChatGPT and Copilot are only based upon what has already been written. And so if I'm trying to do something really novel, it doesn't always kind of work for me. And yeah, maybe I'm not the best prompt engineer for this sort of thing, but AI, again, is a big improvement overall for the PowerShell community over the last couple of years. So those probably would be the two things that come immediately to mind.
You mentioned problem spaces, and I kind of see a certain sector of the PowerShell community and people who kind of get into it as well. And I see a lot of people who are using AI, but also kind of it serves as an artificial prison for them to a certain extent, where they can only get as far as those first couple of responses from AI because they never have had the impetus to kind of go and actually dive into something and learn it themselves, to where they could repeat and actually take something away from it other than just maybe learning one new command. I see a surprising number of people who are getting advantage out of PowerShell, but they're kind of at a certain ceiling.
Yeah, I kind of see a similar thing like in social media. I'll see someone complain something about PowerShell. And as much as I want to get in with that, I go, no, I can't do that because that's just going to be not going to be a good use of my time. But it's clear that that person doesn't understand. They haven't taken the time to learn the PowerShell paradigm and learn the basics of PowerShell. They have a preconception about what PowerShell should be and how it should behave. And when it doesn't meet that preconception, PowerShell sucks. I've probably encountered people like that. So the same thing with code. Yeah, ChatGPT gives you an answer, but if you don't understand enough about PowerShell, understand how objects work, how the pipeline works, how to find help, how to structure things so that you write an object to the pipeline and all of that, yeah, you're really going to struggle and you're not going to get very far and you're not going to be happy. I want people to be happy when you're doing PowerShell. I'm always smiling when I'm running PowerShell.
That's what I'm saying. We want to smile. We want to have fun. We want to make your job easier. That's kind of exciting stuff, right? We want to be efficient and hopefully less stressed. What did you talk about today at PowerShell Wednesday?
We talked about some really fundamental skills, and people often refer to this as the holy trinity, really, of PowerShell commands. Get help, get command, get member. And I kind of add in as a bonus there, select object. If you understand how to use those commands effectively and use them all the time, you can pretty much do anything in PowerShell, even as a beginner. So I spent some time, especially going through how to decipher what could look like cryptic symbols in the help syntax. So I do help get process, and I see a bunch of words and symbols. I see the square brackets and angled brackets and go, and sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not. What does that mean? Does it mean anything? Does it matter to me? And yes, it does. Yes to all of those things. And so I spent some time going through, as I usually do when I'm teaching a beginning PowerShell class, and helping people understand or decipher what that stuff means. Because understanding how to read the help makes it more likely that you'll, for one, go back and read the help, because you need to read the help all the time. PowerShell 7 is a very active, lively project. So we get new releases, there are new commands, could be new parameters could change, the documentation itself could change, there could be new examples, description could be updated. So if you're not in the habit of reading and rereading help, even for stuff that you think you know, you're going to miss out. And so we spent some time in the Discord going through kind of the basics, which even for people who have been around for a while, it's important to remember those fundamentals and go back and look at, for example, I can use get command. I can discover all of the module commands, and I can filter that and refer and say, hey, I want to find all the commands in this module that have a verb of get. That's just a couple of parameters with get command that you can then do something with. But if you just think, get command and then have a command, there's so much more that you can do. And I think often a lot of advanced users kind of forget that, and they're missing out on some low-hanging fruit that they might find useful.
Agreed with that. And I think it sort of ties back to an earlier point about the AI thing and like searching for answers online, which is, finding answers from external sources is a huge part of being in IT. That being said, these commands that you're talking about, get help, get command, get member, they will tell you about what's on your system in your environment. That is something that is a step removed from any search results you're going to get on the internet. They are not going to know what's actually present on your machine. And that can save you a ton of time. And I think you highlighted a few instances of where commands change between versions, and there's all kinds of valid reasons why your local copy that you're using is different than what you'd find on the internet or in a response from AI.
Oh, yeah, because you could find something in a Stack Overflow or a blog article that even I wrote, 5 years ago, that's completely out of date. And don't trust the help, or don't trust what you're reading. You have to look at what you have. I mentioned this in the Discord session today that, when PowerShell 1 was out, we had maybe a couple hundred commands, which I could kind of learn that. But today I have over 6,000 commands and functions on my desktop. There's no way I'm going to know what all those things are, or even how to use all of them. So I have to know how to use get command and get help in order to realize the potential of what's installed on my computer. And that's not even counting, God, if you install the Azure stuff, which probably adds another couple thousand commands.
Dozens of thousands.
Yeah.
A couple thousand modules, I think is what you meant to say.
Oh, yeah.
So we got Summit coming up. You've been going to PowerShell Summit for how long?
I've been I'm one of the people with Don and Jason, like we kind of started the PowerShell Summit years ago. So I've been doing the summit from the very beginning. Actually, even the Proto Summit, which we did at a Quest conference in Vegas or Red Rocks, that even predates the summit.
How does that feel? I mean, gosh, that's quite the, this isn't the only kind of body of work you have or thing you've been a part of, but what's it like to kind of look back and just kind of see that you had a piece of so many awesome things?
Well, for one, it makes me feel old.
Wise, maybe too?
Now, maybe, I suppose. And then I look back and go, wow, that time just seemed to fly by. But I also think about all the great fun I had. I remember before the PSConf EU people took over that event, the PowerShell Summit people, we would run a European event, and we did our last event in Stockholm before Tobias took over the event. And I remember just going to like the Ice Palace with Jason Helmick and his wife and Richard Sidaway, which the older viewers will recognize that name. And, we're hanging, drinking vodka in the frozen room with our parkas on. And so I'd made a lot of great friends, and a lot of great memories from, basically my career in PowerShell. I mean, I don't know what I'd be doing if PowerShell had not come along, because, VB Script wasn't going to pay the bills for much longer. So, and of course, Don was a big factor. So if Don Jones had not come and say, hey, Jeff, let's write a book, my life could be completely different. Although that first book was on VB Script. And then we did the PowerShell book, and then the Month of Lunches books, and then PowerShell toolmaking book. And so I'm looking forward to, so when this comes out, we will all be at the event, and Don and I will be in Bellevue at the same time. This is a rare event. So hopefully people who are listening to this, who are at the event, you brought books that you want us to sign, because this may be the last time that we're both in the same place. And Jeffrey Snover is going to be here this week as well. So the fact that the three of us are all in one place is a very, very rare, and maybe probably the last time that something like that happens, because Jeffrey Snover is on the East Coast now. He's doesn't work at Microsoft anymore. So for those of you who have been around PowerShell for a while, this is your last opportunity really to kind of meet or buy a drink for the old guys.
Yeah, I'm going to have my work cut out for me this week, getting some good interviews while we have everybody sort of here in person, which I'm kind of speaking to the future, but I'm quite excited.
Yeah.
If it's Monday in Seattle right now and I'm there, I'm having a good time. And gosh, I have a question though about, all right, you see someone who is in a part of their career where they're ready to make a big contribution, and you're able to go back sort of in time and reflect on what you've done and your sort of ability to make kind of lasting change in the world. I mean, really, if we're being honest, that is what it is. It's not curing cancer necessarily, but it is changing lives, no doubt, in a very significant way across the world. It's very hard to measure it, but anyways, you got somebody in those shoes and you can give them some advice, maybe a younger version of you. What advice do you have for, maybe it's about enjoying the journey, maybe it's about maximizing your efforts, but what advice do you have for somebody who's sort of early on that?
A couple things. From a practical perspective, I would say learn how to use Git and source control in your code. The PowerShell stuff is easy enough to pick up, but some of the ancillary things like really understanding how to use Git and GitHub and contribute to open source projects, that's, I think, kind of an important thing. I wish I had started using Git earlier and done more formal training as opposed to trying to teach myself, because it's a really complicated thing. I talk about using PowerShell every day. Git is the same way. It's, if you don't use Git every day, it's just so hard to do things. But the other thing that I would recommend is find opportunities to teach PowerShell. Now, anyone can teach PowerShell. I've written about this and talked about this in the past. It's kind of like if you remember the movie Ratatouille, and the chef Gaston says that anyone can cook. Well, I say anyone can teach, because there's always going to be someone who knows one thing less than you do. As long as you know one thing more than someone else, you can teach them. Doesn't have to be a big formal thing. Even if you're just showing someone how to run a command or use a particular parameter, you're teaching. And the best way to learn is by teaching. Because if you are teaching someone, you're going to reinforce what you know. And if you've got time to prepare, say it's going to be maybe something a little more structured, you're forced to kind of learn yourself so that you can better teach it. So I think I was fortunate that I wrote and taught really from the very beginning, because that was kind of always my goal. Years ago, my original plan was to be a college professor and teach theater. So I've always had that teaching impulse. So I've kind of have started that. I started that, way back in the VB script days and the Professor of PowerShell and Mr. Roboto columns and on all of that. But for someone, getting started or in the intermediate level, find opportunities to teach. Present it to user group. Do the Wednesday Discord for Andrew. Present at a conference. Do a lightning talk. Do something, but teach. That would be a great thing for you and for the community and for people who are coming up and learning like you learned.
I love that. I want to say, that's really what it's all about. You got to start off somewhere. And I'd say you can start by asking questions and receiving that help. Since we've kind of identified this pipeline, step one, you got to ask for the help. And you get built up and you receive community support till you get to a point where you're able to help some of those super beginner stuff and maybe take on bigger projects and contribute here or there, wherever you can fit in. But you have to. It's not only because it's like about giving back. That is a large part of it. We need the community to continue to sustain itself. So you do have to give back in order for that to happen. But it's about solidifying your knowledge, like you said. It is about making sure that you have figured out everything about whatever topic it is before moving on. And that is so important for that growth, because there's so many people who will just read a book, not do any of the code inside of it, not apply it, and move on, and they suddenly lose all the information. You have to make this part of your career. And, you can learn from people like Jeff Hicks and others who do things in more of a public way where you're giving back, but it's also sort of building up your personal brand, so to speak, or your personal network, or the confidence and weight that your resume brings because you have this blog with great articles that show you can communicate, or you have this GitHub with fantastic projects that show how PowerShell should be done properly. And you might even know more than the people who are hiring you. Anyways, Jeff, that's what it's all about. That's community, right?
Yeah, there's one caveat to my statement there is do not ask a question like, I'm looking for a script that does X. I need someone to, hey, does anyone have a code that will do X? That's the worst thing to ask for help for. Now, what you should ask for is say, hey, I'm writing a command that uses invoke rest method, and I'm trying to get this parameter to work, and I don't quite understand it. Can someone help me? That's a valid question, but there are a lot of people I've seen on social media that have this idea that PowerShell is just this library of scripts that you just have to go like a library and say, oh, yeah, I'll pull that volume and get my job done. And it doesn't work that way.
Yep. And I think the better you can ask questions, the more likely you're going to get a response. If you ask a question that doesn't help people help you, they may just kind of not spend the extra time to respond, and your question just kind of drifts away. And ultimately, we want our problems to be solved.
Yeah, you need to ask a question that shows that you are invested and that you have tried something, that you're not a bot. I can understand that there are some times where you don't even know where to begin. And that's okay. But don't ask someone to do your work. And that's sometimes very clear because you can tell that someone's a student and they're asking a question and they go, that's a homework assignment that you want help with. And I'm not going to help you with that.
Right. It's like a long definition question kind of thing.
Yeah.
For team servers. Yeah.
And well, now that we have AI, I don't see as many of those questions as I used to, because people now are just going to Copilot ChatGPT and plugging the homework assignment and getting an answer there. But it didn't used to be that way. I used to see a lot of questions. You lazy, I'm not doing your homework.
What advice do you have for those people who are at Summit this week? They're nervous. They're first-time speakers. They're here in the flesh. What advice do you have for them?
First-time speakers or first-time attendees?
I'm selfish. I'm thinking speakers. I think we'll do both. Let's start with attendees. Let's start it as a convo more about like how should you approach conference?
For attendees, the best thing to do is not hide. You need to mingle, talk with people. The proverbial hallway sessions are the best thing really about the summit. We have always wanted to keep the summit attendance numbers small so that you don't feel overwhelmed. It will never get, as far as I know, will never get to the size of Ignite. You're never going to have thousands of people at the PowerShell Summit, even though, that might be kind of fun. An event that size loses its intimacy. And I think what makes the summit so successful has been the intimacy, where you can talk with someone, you can share ideas, you can network. And networking is big because you never know. The next job could come from someone you meet at Summit. And because so much work is virtual these days, the opportunities are pretty substantial. So you can't go back to your room and hide after events. You need to get out there, meet, mingle, talk with people, try to sit at a table for meals with people that you don't know. If you come with a bunch of people from work, don't all congregate together, split up at mealtime so you're not just all talking to each other. Go talk to new people. That's really the best thing for attendees to do, is just, you have to be out there. And the bar scene in the evening, even if you don't drink, is the place to hang out. Just get a ginger ale and hang out, and speakers are there. And if speakers are there, they want to talk to people. So don't be afraid. This is your one chance, or a rare chance, to talk to someone. I'm not going to be, I don't have a date, but my future summits are probably limited. So if there's a question you've been thinking to ask me, don't put it off. If you see me, come up and ask me a question or give me a comment or whatever. And that's going to be true of pretty much any speaker that you see down there. The Microsoft team, Jason Helmick will be there. If you have comments you want to give to the product team, they are there because they want to hear your questions. They want to know what's going on. For speakers, it's kind of the same thing. When you're done speaking, don't go hide in your room. Mingle with attendees. Find out what they thought about your talk. If you're a first-time speaker, one of the great things about speaking at the PowerShell Summit is it's the most forgiving and understanding audience there is. No one's out there to get you. They want you to succeed. Sure, demos are going to fail. No one cares. You should not care. If the demo fails, then you just talk about what the demo would have done. No one's going to look badly or think badly upon you because your demo failed. Okay. So for first-time speakers, take your time, speak clearly. I have a whole spiel I could go about for slide design, but I'll save that for another time. But again, don't shy away from the people who are there, because the reason you're at the PowerShell Summit is as part of the community. And if you're not there as a speaker, interacting with the community, you're missing out, and the attendees are missing out.
Great advice there. And I think a lot of people have had their lives changed by embracing this event and embracing those social opportunities and embracing the networking and all these things you're talking about. Because just speaking from my experience, that's where I found my current job, and all this, a lot of great things have transpired from me that spawned from doing all those things you mentioned, getting out there, saying hi to people. I remember the first time I met you, I was almost peeing my pants. You remember that? I was so nervous, Jeff.
Yeah.
I don't even think I had words for you at the time.
You're still nervous.
I'm still nervous. Oh God.
Yeah, well, look, you're getting better.
I'm
You're
getting there.
better.
One day at a time.
Yeah.
But I'll say that really, like you said, everybody who's there, they are just normal people. You may in your world hold them to a certain standard, but they are just normal people and they want to hear from you. It's not like this is a rock band. You know, it's really great to hear from people who are using whatever content you're putting out there, who are part of this PowerShell journey. It makes us feel connected. It makes us feel like we're not alone. And it is very cool to see, just for me, I've said it so many times on the pod, but to see people getting into PowerShell and having that journey for the first time, writing that first module that leads to a whole bunch of great things here and there and feedback, and then they publish it. You know, Morton comes to mind, a recent podcast guest who just released a module on like action messages. And, you know, it's so awesome to see that kind of circle of community just happening, getting to be a part of it.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever met anyone who said, yeah, going to the PowerShell Summit was a waste of time. Or if they did, they never came back, and they either came to the summit completely unprepared, or they came to the summit and just were bystanders and were not involved at all. Yeah, if you come to the summit and just go to a meal, eat by yourself, see a talk, go back to your room, you're missing 80% of the event.
Yep. And if you're there, come say hi. Send, I think there's a Summit Slack. Send a PM and Slack if you want to find a place to meet up. If there's, you know, you're not running across the person, that's a great way to do it. But looking forward to making new friends this week. But Jeff, I got a ton of questions. I posted on the PDQ Discord PowerShell scripting channel. I said, I'm talking to the man, Jeff Hicks, today. Do we have any questions? And I was like, okay, I didn't get a question for a minute or two. And then they flooded in. So I got a few questions for you here, Jeff. Are you ready?
All right.
You buckled in, seatbelt and all that?
Right. I'm going to try to keep these sound bite style. So
that's perfect. What are some common mistakes you see beginners make when learning PowerShell, and how can they avoid them? Thank you, Trent Blackburn, for the question.
Preconceptions. People come to PowerShell, as I mentioned earlier, with preconceptions. They don't take the time to be open to what PowerShell is. That's probably the biggest thing. And yeah, I'll leave that at that. Yeah.
Since PS exec is blocked at my job, invoke command as doesn't work. Is there a way to do a system account without PS exec with PowerShell?
I don't think so. I was trying to see if I had some code, because I thought I had something that allowed you to do it, but it may have relied on PS exec. If I can find something, I'll send it to you and you can post it in the show notes, but I don't think so.
What is his name? Josh? I can't remember his last name. His name is coming to mind for me, but yeah, if we have it, there'll be a link in the show notes. If not, good luck to you.
Yeah.
This question is from Morton Minster. How do you approach troubleshooting a complex PowerShell script? Do you have a go-to strategy, or do you do anything specific to start your troubleshooting?
Well, one thing that I always teach people is start simple. So when you're writing your PowerShell script or function, you know, at its core, you're going to have one or two PowerShell, pipeline expressions. Don't try to write the final function and then hope that it works. Build it, in small steps. So if you run your function, it just does the first part. Or even better, even before you get to writing the function, make sure that core code runs interactively in the console. So let's say I have a function that's built around a pipelined expression. So all the function is just pretty wrappers to add parameters and make it easy to use and all of that. But the bottom line is just, I'm going to run get command, pipe to something else, pipe to something else, pipe to something else. So in the console, I want to make sure that command works. I'm going to start with the first command, make sure I get the results that I expect. Pipe, add the next command. If the result's good, pipe, and so on. Once I have that working, then I can put it into the function, because then I'll know at least my core code works. If it now fails in my function, now I know, okay, I've screwed something up in my function. The other thing that I do in all of my functions is I use write verbose messages liberally. So I will, and if you look at any of my code that's up on GitHub, or like, I think you mentioned you guys looked at the PS Blue Sky module in the Discord. In my verbose messages, I actually even have a little tag that has a timestamp, and it shows me whether I'm in the begin, process, or end script block, and then some statement like starting command, running PowerShell version 7.2, getting computer name from this file name, blah blah blah, and all the way through. And the reason I do that with begin, process, and end, and like the starting command and ending command, is often my commands will call other commands. And so by having that detailed verbose messaging, I can run my command -verbose, and I can see the flow and say, okay, I'm down here, now I've gone over this command, over to this command. In the PS Blue Sky module and a couple others that I've been doing lately, I actually use a custom verbose messaging that actually highlights the different commands in ANSI colors, PS style colors. So there's a visual clue as to what my code is doing. So I like to say I rarely have to debug a script or debug code and using the actual debugger, because I start small, build my way up, and my verbose messages help me identify where things are and what values are being used, and so on.
That's a solid answer right there.
Yeah, that's a long soundbite. Sorry.
No, it's a sound bit. No, it's a sound megabit.
The other thing that you can do is to learn how to use and incorporate write information into your functions. In the PS Blue Sky module, because I'm doing a lot of REST API calls and I'm getting JSON data back, I am using write information and writing that JSON data back as an information value. So if I've run the command and done dash information variable, $V, then I can go through and I can actually look at the raw data that has come back as the function was being run. And that has helped me actually, I've gone through recently and process of revising some of those commands and extending the output. And I don't have to go through and try to figure out what that is. I can just run the command, look at the information variable, and look at that raw JSON data. So write information is a commandlet that a lot of people should use more.
That's good advice. I mean, I can tell you've definitely written a lot of PowerShell in your day. And I like how you seem to get that information from the root beer you just sipped. So,
yes.
Interesting. I might need to pick up some root beers.
Yeah.
Next question from Agent 13. Jeff, what should be included in a PowerShell script to make me look like I know what I'm doing? Comments, parameters, what?
So look like what you're doing. For the user of that script, yes, at least comment-based help would be valuable. I would recommend adding the commandlet binding tag that allows you to put in your write verbose statements, and help messages for all your parameters. because the help message will be used in the comment-based help. It will be used as documentation. So if someone's looking at your code, which could be you in 9 months, you say, oh, I see what this parameter is doing. And don't be skimpy with the error message. You can have a sentence or two if you need to. But I think if you add, kind of those things to start with, this is assuming you're following, by the way, the PowerShell best practices, no aliases in your code, full commandlet names, full parameter names. So as long as you're doing that, I think you'll be off to a good start.
A good tell for me too is how they name their commands. If you wrote a function, like, did you name it some random crap, or did you actually use get verb to get like an approved verb?
Yeah, you need to use get verb. It has to be should be an approved verb. If you if an alias makes more sense, fine. Then create an alias for your command. There's an alias tag that you can put in underneath commandlet binding. Do alias in parentheses and then the name or comma separated name of the aliases. So if you're running a command and conceptually it makes sense that I'm going to use a non-standard verb because it just makes more sense, just make that the alias, even though the actual official name will use a standard verb. So use a standard verb. It used to be that when you imported a module with a non-standard verb, it would complain, you get a warning. I don't think PowerShell does it anymore, or I haven't imported a module that has done that lately. But the last thing you want is to write a module and give it to a user and say, oh, I get a message, I import the module, this is warning. Oh, relax. If you just give it a standard name, then you eliminate that. But if you want to give them an alias, then fine, give it an alias.
Boom. From Treston Poole, question for Jeff. What C# concepts you used inside of PowerShell? For example, I used delegates in PowerShell for the first time, and it was awesome.
I find myself, in terms of C# constructs, using generic lists a lot, especially if I want to work with a text file. So instead of trying to parse that text file as a whole, I'll create a generic list object, read in each line of code into the list, and then the list has methods that allow me to find things. Then I can find the line that I want to change that line in the collection, and then rewrite the collection out to the file. And it's so much easier than trying to muck around with raw text and regex and all of that. So the list collection is probably the big C# thing that I use a lot lately.
You nailed it. You answered the questions. Thank you to everybody out there who asked a question. Jeff, thank you for answering it. And while we're here, I want to say thank you for listening. Give us a like, comment, subscribe, 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts or your podcast platform of choice. We're everywhere every week. We got Mondays on the podcast. We got Wednesdays at PowerShell Wednesday where we have meetups and we get more hands-on. So I hope you're on the ride with us. Jeff, we're all in this together. In one way or another, this PowerShell community we have here, it's something special. And I think that we wouldn't be here where we are without people like you who've put in a ton of effort to help us get here. And what greater way to say thanks than to pay it forward?
Yep. Thank you very much for having me. Hope to see people at the summit, see you at the bar, at my talk, and just kind of around Bellevue and Mainbauer.
Heck yes. And Jeff, people want to connect. They want to see what's happening with you. They want to hear about the latest updates in your world. Where can we find you on the internet?
Blue Sky is probably the one platform I'm most active on. I think you can search by name or JDH IT Solutions. I'll give Andrew a link to a GitHub IO page that has links to everything I do online, as well as my personal stuff like my composing and other things that I fool around with in my spare time.
Jeff, thank you. One final word for the people. What do you have to say?
Just get out there and use PowerShell. Do good. I kind of want to actually reinforce something that Rob Sewell's been pushing a lot on social media, and that is be kind. So find something that helps someone else. It doesn't even have to be in PowerShell. It doesn't have to be even technical. World's a very crazy place these days. And I think the more that we can do to be kind to ourselves and kind to others will have big benefits down the road. So be kind, do good.
I think there's no better way to have an impact on the world than by being kind and having that impact on your immediate communities, your family, all that kind of stuff. It is the number one way that you should look to make change in the world. And you definitely got to take care of yourself in order to do that. So important stuff there. Well, what a great way to end it, man. I'm feeling positive. I'm inspired. I'll see you at PowerShell Summit, and everybody out there, I'll see you online at PowerShell Summit, wherever you are. Look forward to seeing you. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the PowerShell Podcast. The PowerShell Podcast is a PDQ production, making device management simple, secure, and pretty damn quick.